I'm Douglas Harrington. I'm 66 years old. I've been in prison for 31 years for a murder I didn't commit, and the man I paid $250,000 to save me never even looked at the evidence. He did nothing. Now I'm serving life. Don't trust them. Let me tell you what happened. It started in the Bakersfield County Jail, spring of 1994. I was a scared auto parts clerk from Oildale with a high school diploma, staring at a murder charge from a bar fight that went wrong. I was desperate. You see, my public defender was a kid, drowning in cases. Then one day, a guard slipped a business card through the bars. It was glossy, thick. It said, Lawrence Thorne, Esquire, results. That card felt like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. I was so desperate for someone who knew what they were doing. So I called him, and a few days later he came to see me in the visitation room. That's when everything changed. Lawrence Thorne wasn't like anyone from Oildale. He wore a suit that I knew cost more than my car. He smelled like expensive cologne and confidence. He spoke in this calm, sure voice, laying out my case like a puzzle he'd already solved. He talked about war chests and total commitment. He made me feel like my freedom was just a matter of resources. Honestly, he was selling hope, and I was buying every word. Then he laid out the price of that hope, right there on the cold metal table between us. He had the papers ready, the deed to my parents' house. They'd worked their whole lives for that place in Oildale. My meager retirement fund from the parts store, loan papers from my brother Mike. Thorne called it consolidating resources. I signed every one. I remember the feeling so clear. It wasn't fear. It was this huge wave of relief. I thought I was investing in my future. I didn't know it then, but I was paying for my own coffin. For a few weeks I clung to that relief. Then my brother Mike came to visit. He looked sick. He told me Thorne's firm had cashed out our parents' house immediately. The for sale sign was up. Thorne wasn't returning his calls. Mike said, Doug, he hasn't subpoenaed a single witness from the bar. He's not doing anything. A cold knot formed in my gut. But I was in too deep. I told Mike and myself to trust the process. Thorne had told me to be patient. I chose my expensive lawyer's smooth promises over my own brother's frantic truth. The months between signing and the trial were a void. Thorne's updates were vague. Motions are filed. Strategy is shaping up. My family frayed. My wife left. The kids stopped visiting. My parents, heartbroken over their lost home, couldn't face me. Only Mike tried to hold on, but even his calls became strained. I was alone, clinging to the idea of the brilliant, expensive defense I'd bought. That isolation made me vulnerable. So when Thorne finally came to see me the day before the trial, I was just grateful for the attention. He finally came. The trial started tomorrow. I was frantic, trying to go over details. I brought up the security camera from the bar's parking lot. I'd told him about it a dozen times. It could have shown the other guy swinging first. Thorne just waved his hand. He said, irrelevant. The angle is bad. We're going with character witnesses. He said it like he was bored. And then I saw it. I looked into his eyes. It was just a flicker behind his polished glasses. It wasn't focus or cunning strategy. It was boredom, a tedious chore. My life, my family's sacrifice, my $250,000. It was a closed file to him. The transaction was complete. He'd been paid. The crisis wasn't in the courtroom tomorrow. The betrayal was right here, in this plastic chair, watching my lawyer realize he had nothing left to sell me. I felt numb. The trial the next day was a blur, a formality. I sat there at the defense table in a suit Mike had bought me, already knowing how it would end. Thorne went through the motions. He gave a speech about reasonable doubt, about me being a hard-working family man from Oildale. He called a couple of guys from the parts store who said I was quiet. It was weak. It was nothing. The prosecution had witnesses from the bar, people who were scared and confused that night, who said they saw me throw the last punch. They never showed the security footage. Thorne never made them. He never even mentioned it. I don't remember the arguments. I just remember the silence when the jury came back. It was a heavy, thick silence in that Kern County courtroom. The foreman stood up. He said, "Guilty, on the count of murder in the second degree." The judge asked if I had anything to say before sentencing. I looked at Thorne. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of his head. My mouth was too dry to speak. I had nothing. The judge said the words, "Life in prison." It didn't feel like a shock. It felt like a confirmation, like I'd known this was the destination since that moment in the visitation room, seeing the boredom in his eyes. Thorne gave my shoulder a pat, an empty, quick, "I'm sorry, Doug," and he was gone, just like that. The man in the $2,000 suit walked out the big wooden doors. I was led away in chains through a different door. That was 1994. I was 35. For 31 years, I sat with that silence. I let it bury me. My wife, she divorced me within a year. The kids, they were young, a daughter and a son. They tried to visit at first, but it's hard on a kid coming to a place like this. Eventually, they stopped. I don't blame them. My parents, losing their house broke them. My mother died in '98, my father in 2001. I wasn't allowed to go to either funeral. Mike told me later it was a mercy they went before seeing me grow old in here. Mike was the only thread. He'd write, sometimes call, but it was strained. What was there to say? How's the cell? How's the weather outside? The weight of what I'd lost, what we'd lost because of my signature on those papers, sat between every word. Eventually, the letters and calls just faded. I thought my story was over, just a sad man in a cage, a forgotten case file in a storage room somewhere. Then a few days ago, I got a letter. It was from Mike, my brother. The postmark was from Bakersfield. My hands shook opening it. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. It was short, just a few lines on a plain sheet of paper. He said he was sorry for how things went. He said he thought of me often. He said he'd retired from the mill, that his kids were grown. It wasn't much. It wasn't forgiveness or some big revelation, but it was a thread, a thin, fragile thread back to the world. And it made me so angry. Not at Mike, never at Mike. It made me angry at my own silence. All these years, sitting here, rotting in this concrete box, I'd been protecting the man who put me here. My silence, my shame, my just taking it, it only helped one person, Lawrence Thorne. It let him go on. It let him keep his fancy office, his expensive suits, his results. He probably retired rich, playing golf, while I counted cracks in the ceiling. My family shattered. My parents died in a rented apartment, and he just moved on. My $250,000 bought him a nice car, maybe a boat. It bought me a life sentence. That letter broke the dam. It made me see the lesson in all this waste, all this time. You see, I finally understood. I wasn't hiring a warrior. I was hiring a salesman. And I was the perfect mark. Scared, confused, with everything to lose. He sold me peace of mind and delivered a life sentence. He saw the deed to my parents' house, and he saw a commission. He saw my terror, and he saw a closing opportunity. A price tag doesn't buy you care. It just buys you a service. And if the man providing the service doesn't care, you're just a wallet to be emptied. You have to look past the suit, past the fancy office, past the glossy business card that says results. You have to see the man. Look him in the eye, and don't look away until you see something real. If you're ever in that hell, and I hope to God you never are, you ask him questions. Not tomorrow, not after you sign. You ask him today. What is your plan for my case? Show me. What evidence have you reviewed? Show me. Who will you call as witnesses? Tell me their names. You make him show you his work. If he hesitates, if he gets annoyed, if he dazzles you with big words about strategy and trust the process, instead of showing you concrete steps, you run. You get up and you walk out of that room. Because that high price tag he's quoting, that's not the cost of your defense. That's the cost of your own desperation. And he knows exactly what it's worth. And he knows exactly what it's worth. That realization after Mike's letter, it didn't just make me angry. It picked a scab off a wound that had never really healed. For 31 years, I'd told myself a story, that I was just unlucky, that the system was broken, that the jury got it wrong. But sitting there with that cheap paper in my hands, I had to finally admit the harder truth. The system worked exactly as it was supposed to. I hired a professional, and he performed a service. The service was taking my money. He did that job perfectly. The real pain wasn't in the trial. It was in the years that followed. The silence. You see, in here you have nothing but time to replay things. And for decades I replayed one visit. Not from Thorne, from my daughter Sarah. She was 9 when I went in. She came with her mother once, about 2 years after the conviction. We sat in the visiting room, with the plastic chairs and the vending machine humming in the corner. She was wearing a dress that was too bright for this place. She didn't know what to say, so she just looked at me her little hands folded in her lap, and she asked the only question that mattered to her. "Daddy, when are you coming home?" Her mother looked away. I felt my throat close up. What could I say? Never? I traded our family's future for a lawyer who was bored with me. I looked at her, at this perfect little girl who still believed her father could fix anything, and I lied. I said, "We're working on it, sweetheart. My lawyer is working on an appeal." I even said his name. "Mr. Thorne is trying." I used his name like a shield, like it still meant something. I saw a tiny flicker of hope in her eyes. She nodded, so serious. "Okay," she said. That was the last time I saw her. Her mother never brought her back. I found out years later through Mike that Sarah had asked about the appeal for a long time. Is Mr. Thorne still working on it? And when the answer was always no, she just stopped asking. She stopped asking about me. I wasn't the father in prison waiting to come home. I became the father who made a promise he couldn't keep, who believed in a man who didn't believe in him. I became a lesson in disappointment. That's what that $250,000 bought. It didn't just buy Thorne's boredom. It bought my children's silence. It bought my parents' shame, dying in a small apartment instead of the home they'd poured their lives into. It bought Mike's strained voice on the phone, trying to find something, anything, to talk about that wasn't the giant rotting elephant in the room. It bought me a front row seat to the collapse of every single thing that ever mattered. And for what? For a defense that never was. Thorne never hired an investigator. He never pulled the security footage, even though I begged him. He never tracked down the bartender who saw the whole thing start. He never did a damn thing but cash the checks. I found that out later, too. In here you meet guys who know things. I met a guy in the late 90s who'd been a paralegal in Bakersfield. I told him my story, Thorne's name. He just snorted. "Thorne? Yeah, he was known. He was a settlement vulture, personal injury, slip and falls. He had no business touching a murder case. He just saw a scared guy with some assets to liquidate." I felt so stupid. A settlement vulture. I was just a bigger slip and fall. That's the hardest moment to admit. Not the betrayal. My own stupidity. My own desperate, willing blindness. Mike tried to tell me. He stood right there in that jail visiting room, his face pale, and he told me the house was gone and Thorne wasn't doing the work. And what did I do? I told my own brother, the one person trying to save me, to be quiet, to trust the process. I chose the liar in the expensive suit over the truth in my brother's scared eyes. I chose wrong. And I've paid for that choice every single day since. That's the weight of it. That's what I've been carrying. It's not just the life sentence. It's knowing I did it to myself. I signed the papers. I ignored the warnings. I bought the hope he was selling because I was too terrified to face the truth without it. The bars around me, I helped build them. Thorne just handed me the tools and took payment for the delivery. Mike's letter. It was like he was throwing a rope into the hole I'd spent decades digging. A simple, frail rope. I think of you often. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to hide down here in the dark with my shame. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could start to climb out. Not out of this prison. That's not the rope he threw. Out of the silence. Out of the story I'd been telling myself that let Thorne off the hook. The crisis wasn't back in 1994. The real crisis was all the years I spent afterward, letting that man's betrayal define me, letting it make me small and quiet. Mike's letter made me see that my silence was the final installment on Thorne's fee. I'd been paying it with my life, every single day. I'm done paying. I'm done paying. I'm done being quiet. That letter from Mike, it didn't just wake me up. It gave me back my voice. And here's what I need to say with it. I understand now what I bought for that $250,000. I didn't buy a defense. I bought a lesson. The most expensive lesson of my life, carved into 31 years of concrete and steel. And the lesson is this: desperation is a currency. And there are people out there who specialize in spending it for you. Lawrence Thorne saw a scared working-class man from Oildale, a guy with a high school diploma, a job selling auto parts, and a family home he could liquidate. And he saw a business opportunity. My terror was his opening line. My family's future was his closing bonus. He wasn't evil. That's what makes it worse. He was just efficient. He performed a service. He relieved me of my money and my hope, in that order. And the system allowed it, because I allowed it. I was wrong. I was so wrong to think a price tag meant care. I looked at that suit, that calm voice, that fancy card that said results, and I saw a savior. I should have been looking for a fighter. A fighter would have been obsessed with the security footage. A fighter would have been in that bar, finding witnesses, getting statements. A fighter would have had fire in his eyes, not boredom. Thorne had the boredom of a man who'd already deposited the check. The crisis was over for him. It was just beginning for me. So here's my advice, straight from a cell in 2025. If you ever find yourself in hell, facing charges, any charges, don't look at the office. Don't listen to the promises. Look at the man. Sit across from him and ask one question. What is the first piece of evidence you're going to examine? And when can we look at it together? If he says, don't worry about that, or leave the strategy to me, or anything that isn't a specific, tangible plan for that very day, you get up. You walk out, you thank him for his time, and you leave. That hesitation, that deflection, that's the sound of your desperation ringing in his ears. He hears a payday. You're hearing your life ticking away. Don't sign a thing until you've seen him work. Not talk about working. Work. Has he filed a motion? Show me. Has he contacted a witness? Give me the name. Has he reviewed the discovery? Let's go over it right now. If he won't or can't, you know all you need to know. The fanciest brochure in the world is just paper. Your freedom, your family's home, your future, that's real. Protect what's real. I lost everything real. My parents died without their home. My kids grew up with a ghost for a father. My brother carried a weight of helpless anger for decades. And me? I lost 3 decades of sunrises, of birthdays, of holding my grandkids. I traded it all for the empty promise of a man in a good suit. The regret isn't just that I'm here. The regret is the chain reaction that signature caused. It shattered lives far beyond this cell. But you still have time. You have this moment, right now, to be smarter than I was. You have the chance to ask the hard questions before the ink is dry. You have the chance to listen to the Mike in your life, the brother, the sister, the friend who's panicking for you, instead of shushing them. That panic is love. That slick calm from a stranger, that's a sales pitch. Choose the love, every single time. This isn't just about lawyers. It's about trusting yourself when you're most afraid. My gut screamed at me when Mike told me the house was sold. I told my gut to shut up. Don't do that. Your instinct is the last, best thing you have when your back's against the wall. Listen to it. I'm telling this story now because my silence helped no one but Lawrence Thorne. Maybe putting this out into the world can help someone else. This channel, from what I understand, is for stories like mine. Hard lessons learned too late. So maybe others can learn them sooner. If what I've said here means something to you, if it rings a bell or makes you think of someone, then hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications. There are other folks here who've paid for their wisdom in years, just like I have. You might need to hear what they have to say too. Leave me a comment down below. Tell me, have you ever trusted the wrong person when you were vulnerable? What happened? Or maybe you're going through something right now, and this story hit a nerve. Say so. Sometimes just naming the fear takes away its power. If you know someone who's facing a legal fight, or any kind of crisis where they're being asked to trust a stranger with everything, share this with them. Share it quietly. Just say, I heard this story, made me think of you. That like button isn't for me. It's a flag. It tells the algorithm to show this to someone else who might be sitting in a cold room, about to sign their life away on a line. Help it find them. And if you've got a story of your own, a lesson you bought with your time, your money, your heart, there's apparently a way to submit it, a form in the description. Do it. Your pain doesn't have to be wasted. It can be a warning sign for someone else on the road. That's the only redemption I can hope for now. I read a book in here once, a long time ago. Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. It's about a lawyer who actually fights. Who cares? It's in the library. I've put a link to it in the description, if they let me do that. Read it. It'll show you what a real warrior looks like. It'll show you what I thought I was buying. My name is Douglas Harrington. I'm 66 years old. I'm from Oildale, Bakersfield. I wasted $250,000 on a lawyer who did nothing, and now I'm serving life. Don't trust the suit. Trust your gut. Ask the questions. You still have time. I didn't. I just signed. Don't be me.